please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's Log, Subdates 231010.1. The NPC crew are quite fond of their new surroundings and have already partially decorated the dumpster they now reside within, which they've also renamed to the MP Cumpster. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be covering a very contentious subject, but the contentious subject is going to be demonstrated via two separate videos that made their rounds on TikTok. The reason why is because some people have immediately jumped onto a subject, made it about a community, which in turn leads to others on places like Twitter to pounce on them and simply say, you do realise on the face of what you just said, you are implying something quite sinister about a community. Something which is hardly a surprise, because when opportunities present themselves, many people will say really dumb things, not realising the grander picture that they are playing a part in. Because when one lives within their own echo chamber, they cannot see beyond their own smug, their own arrogance, their own self-importance, much of which is inflated and misplaced. The subject of the day is the penalty for committing certain crimes and the punishment one receives where one is no longer a part of this mortal coil. I can't call it by its actual name because YouTube will flag that. So let's call it fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction. If you are somebody that has been sentenced to essentially be fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction, then I'm really sorry, and we'll certainly get into why, if you are somebody that is suffering from being fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction, how screwed you are. I may be finding this far too funny when the subject matter is not something to laugh at. But if you got the joke, well done.
I don't think that is as bad as it's going to get in the state of Florida or possibly red states in general for trans people.
Recently it was announced that the fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction penalty was going to be reintroduced into the state of Florida for very heinous crimes committed against children, or be on the table for that particular crime. We in the United Kingdom do not have this penalty, although I was led to believe for quite some time that it still existed under the guise of only one type of crime could exist that would justify it. Treason, I believe, or anyone trying to harm the monarchy. However, a Halls of Injustice due out tomorrow concerning the royal family would lend credence to the belief that actually we just do not do it anymore at all. Because I was raised in a country that is fundamentally against it, although the criminal justice system is quite laughable when it comes to administering any form of justice, in this country anyway, I cannot perceive how it could be okay, especially considering we have seen over the years many people who have been wrongly convicted of quite heinous crimes, many years later, decades later, being freed and given back a life but losing 20, 30 years in the process. If that person has spent many years on fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction row, I think that it can be argued the state has harmed the person, the wrong person. And it gets quite murky in that area because you have to demonstrably prove without a shadow of a doubt that that person is guilty. A lot of systems in place don't do that. They just want to prove guilt because they got a target to hit. They're not interested in actually finding the truth. It becomes quite a difficult area, and that's why we in the United Kingdom do not have this system. But some states, some countries, many countries have it in effect still. When it comes to children, a line is drawn though, and that line, invariably, especially if you're online, you'll understand this, involves many saying short drop and a sudden stop, in the form of 3 words, get the rope. Again, English, I cannot perceive this as being a good way of dealing with the problem. But let's hear what this person says before we get to the next video.
I think that this is the ultimate goal. Yes, he wants to deter as many gay and trans people from the state of Florida as possible, but those who do not leave at their own free will, well, what's going to happen if you refuse to leave a bathroom?
Oh no. Oh no, that's a really bad take. because you've already consigned them to a label of SEX offender. That's really bad. I understand that some say there is something inappropriate concerning, for example, pride and children. 100% agreed, children should not be at pride events. Not when we've seen the more extreme versions of what people are doing at pride events and children are present. We've seen it over a number of years from the rise of Desmond is Amazing times, which was a few years back. If anyone remembers, Desmond is no longer amazing. In this, though, you've committed a bit of a no-no here. We should insert the hashtag not all. Some are within many different communities, in fact, because it's hardly a surprise. You often find criminals, or those who have tastes for things that should be haram, hide in plain sight. They're very good at it. I should insert, there are many people who are not within the LGBT community, and all the other letters, sorry, I don't know all of them, okay? There are many different variants, I can't keep up, I'm old, alright? Who are not what you have labelled them as, or considered labelling them as. And there are many people outside of it who are it as well. I'm fully aware that one is paying attention to what could be considered a culture war, sure, but one does have to consider their phrasing when they make their little snarky remarks on TikTok.
They're already calling the communities trans and gay, they're already calling them groomers.
So what the new law is supposed to represent is apparently those who are convicted of child-related offences, the option of the fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction penalty is on the table. And just because this tickles me a little bit, there are a number of states that are blue, currently blue, that have the death penalty still in effect. I'm not including California because I know their current governor has a ruling against it, but there are a number of states that do vote blue that have it, and off the top of my head, Delaware and Arizona, Georgia I guess, yeah, that voted blue, didn't it, in 2020, are the obvious ones. But the big deal is because Florida is red, that's the problem. As you're edging closer and closer to election season, Ron DeSantis is trying to do something to ensure he stands out. Whether he's right or not, that is very much a you America thing to work out. Me, the UK, I don't actually care. I'm intrigued to see how this plays out though.
That's the next step. Well, they didn't leave the bathroom because they're obviously going to do something with my child.
I'm not going to sit here and dismiss what this person says, because I'm sure to many this is a valid perspective. It does come across though as a false equivalence. If someone does commit a legitimate crime against a child, there is a problem. To go reductio ad absurdum is nonsensical, although the debate around bathrooms has been going on for a long time. In the case of Florida, they have already made a decision on it, and I'm sure one day that can be changed back if you get a Democrat who's a bit more progressive leaning, right? Some will regard what you are saying as a massive false equivalence and overreaction for falsely comparing and blowing out of proportion using a bathroom and that of those who are, well, fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction.
And if they think that you're a pedophile or a groomer or a sex offender, it's legalized genocide.
So what you're saying is, this law will now be used as an excuse in the state of Florida to round up people within the LGBTQIA+ and all the other letters community to commit a legal that. Okay, a culling is what you are calling it because they are LGBT and you are conflating them with child other words because what you perceive as your perspective in the culture war is that many people say within, this is your perspective, the LGBTQIA++++ minus and squared community as all groomers. Okay, that's video number 1. Video number 2 is in the same theme, so let's dig into that.
Hi. So there have been some interesting bills coming out of Florida this week, such as the multiple proposals that would allow the death penalty for anyone who sexually batters a child under the age of 12.
In many areas of the world, this is considered quite a contentious bill because many cultures, many societies do not believe that the fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction penalty should exist at all. Again, I was raised in the United Kingdom. We don't have it. The last one was in 1964. It's been a while.
Which was approved unanimously. Or the vote to allow the death penalty on a split jury. Out of the 27 states that allow the death penalty, Florida is now one of 4 that allows it based on a split jury.
I've seen recently a number of court cases where, with a split jury, some have managed to come to a decision that the judge has then ruled in favour of, even though it has been a split jury. It, in and of itself, is a bit of a dangerous one, I think. I believe you need to prove, without reasonable doubt, any reasonable doubt, you have to prove absolute guilt. This is a dangerous area to tread, because you cannot administer justice without 100% certainty. At least that's what I believe. I could, though, be fundamentally wrong on this.
Now, you might be thinking, people who harm children deserve the worst penalties in the world, and sure.
Generally, I like to believe that those who've committed a crime against a child who are no longer a PDF file, they are an S.dot offender, deserve to be locked up for the rest of their life. That's my perspective, because you can rehabilitate, but there's always still a risk. Much like proving guilt, that person needs to prove change. Don't know how you do it, really. But also I have a zero-tolerance policy since being an uncle. I want to protect my nieces and nephews with every fibre of my being. But that's just my uncle perspective on this. Let's call it that. Now, I'm certain this is the part where you now say, but.
But.
Oh, would you look at that? I called it.
But I want us to think about how we keep having these scares focused around minorities about how we are going to harm the children, we are going to be predators, we are going to be etc.
On this channel, I have a series called The Halls of Injustice. I have covered a number of people who are S.dot offenders. Many of them are from the LGBT community. There aren't many statistics because people refuse to acknowledge the statistics when it comes to gathering necessary information, because you will often find, and I'm getting to a point where this makes sense, people will happily collect information concerning race and gender, but when it comes to sexuality and crimes committed, people are more reluctant because, much like with race and people misunderstanding the fundamental statistics behind that, people are worried about being called a random buzzword in connection to it. The UK is a great example of this, where you have it mostly by ethnicity and gender only. You do not have it by sexuality. But there's another point here that needs to be raised, and that is that you have immediately pounced on one aspect of many criticisms and labelled yourself that because of you believing you are more of a victim than you really are, certainly within society.
Giving the government the right to murder just means they have to redefine who deserves murder before you are on that list, before we are on that list.
I wonder how many people in my comments have written, then just don't commit crimes. Obey the law of the land for the state you are in or the country you are in, and you are less likely to end up in this position. I'm expecting at least 1 or 2 comments along those lines. Generally speaking, there is always going to be injustice when any law is changed. Always. But I do think when others pounce on this and in tweets referencing the 2 videos I've shown you, speak about how this affects the LGBTQ community the most and will make them leave Florida, or wondering what it is you are trying to hide to make you so worried about this Florida law. I will restate, in the grand scheme of arguments presented, there are some valid points here, but the valid points for me come from the fact that we here do not have the, what did I call it again? Oh yeah, Florida uranium carbon potassium erectile dysfunction penalty. In this instance, because it's such a contentious subject, I do actually really want to know what you all think, because I know some of you will be in favour, some of you will not. Be respectful about it though, that's all I ask. I come from a country where it is not a thing, but for those who do have it as a thing, I'd love to know whether you're for or against it, and why. My main gripe that will continue throughout my life, to be honest, quite a long one, I'm immortal after all, is that you have to prove 100% that the person you are consigning to the state of fluorine, uranium, carbon, potassium, erectile dysfunction is in fact guilty. But do let me know in the comments down below and really drive up that engagement. Thank you.